Okay. So we were having trouble where if we create an object, which I will do, test object in collection. The trouble that we were having was that if I add an object to a collection, we'll put it in that one, and we'll, I don't know, we'll leave it private, I guess. So we've got this object. It's in a collection, and what we were seeing was that only for objects in collections that the edit page was breaking, which made it so that you couldn't edit the object. But now you can do that. And we can see that the object has updated as we expected. This was kind of a frustrating bug, I think, that was particularly bothering Gabriella in demos. We're generally not making a big priority out of this individual object edit functionality, but it is important since it's here to have it working effectively, and we do think it's an important UI feature that we have. So that's, thank you to Vivian for carrying that work. Okay, let's do import. So the first thing to call out is that we've removed the legacy bulk work and replaced it with a community supported bulk ingest engine, which gives us quite a bit of what we think we need from import export. Out of the box is overstating it, because we've had to do quite a bit of work to align the system with the Comet backend, but we reached the point this sprint where this importer is working at least as well as what we had in place before, and we've replaced the older functionality with this. So I'm going to show us an import. And the model here is that you can create importers, and those importers can be sort of like set up to run multiple times. So one way you might handle an importer is to like set it up to harvest from an OAI endpoint every month, let's say. So that's why you see these importers here. I'm going to create a new one for a one-time CSV ingest, which is where our attention has been mostly focused. So let's name this mix types for demo. And we're going to import into the default project, and we'll do it once on save, and we'll use the CSV importer. And I'm going to upload a file, and I'm going to show you the file. Can you see to my text editor as well as the import form at this point?
Yes.
Okay. So I've got 4 objects that I'm going to ingest using this import process. That I have them set up to import to the 2 models that we're currently supporting. The first, that we're currently supporting on the UCSB deployment. The first is the generic object, and that's using the sort of generalized UCSB schema, and then also the geospatial object, which is using the schema that's aligned with Aardvark. There's some overlap between those schemas, so they both have a title, but the subject spatial should only affect the geospatial objects, and that's why it's left empty for the two generic objects. And I'm going to go ahead and import these, and we should be able to see 4 objects come up. Let me make sure I've saved that file. Yes, okay. Okay. So this is all I need to do to set up and import. I can do 2 things. I guess I can do 3 things now. I can just create the importer and do nothing else. I can create and validate, which is what I'm going to do. And then I can create and import, which is essentially like I'm going to do everything all at once. I'm going to do create, validate, and import. And I'll show you what I think it's instructive to separate the validate and import step so that you can see what's happening. So I'm going to do it that way. Okay, so here's our importer. And what you can see is some metadata about the importer itself. And you can also see the objects that it has queued up to create. These entry IDs are bulk-rex internal IDs that won't impact the object at all. So I think we have some like maybe label changes to do. It's important, I think, to call out that this isn't an identifier in any kind of curatorial or interesting sense to the end user. This is mostly an internal ID for bulk-rex's purposes. This is an identifier and also an interesting way, and I think we're discussing label changes for this, but we can get to that in a second. So what we'll see is that you can see this item has not yet been imported successfully, and that's because I chose to validate it first. You can see, though, that it did validate, as represented by the green checks here. And you can see what metadata it has targeted. Great. And my geospatial objects have some subject spatial fields. Great. And now I could choose to do a couple of things. I could edit this importer. So that would be useful if for some reason the validation had failed, which we can kick at in a second. But I can also discard it, delete the importer, or since it succeeded and I want to import these objects, I can continue. And now, going to these objects, instead of my older, these objects don't have not yet been imported links, we can find the actual object that got imported. So there's my title for demo. If I go to my geospatial objects, and then I have a geospatial title for demo and the spatial coverage Earth. The other spatial coverage that I put in is the moon. So hopefully we got that. Yes, fantastic. Okay, so that's an import. The imports all run in the background and are running in sort of like a scalable parallel configuration. So you shouldn't see long queues for imports happen. I think we do have some work to do to test this at large scale so that we can get the various deployments figured out in a way that's going to work for real. But like you can see that for a couple of objects, they just got created in a flash. Okay, so I want to do a couple of things. It sounded like somebody might be chiming in with a question.
That's me. Only because I have you there with that screen. I noticed when you were using the importer, the visibility, I believe the default was public, and you didn't change it. And I'm looking at your objects, and they have private.
Interesting. I'm just going to flag that for attention, Gabriella.
Okay.
I think that is of interest. I know that as part of the geospatial integration, we're paying close attention to the visibility as specified in the CSV. And I think it may be our goal to coming back to the importer form to just sort of like drop this from the form so that we're not trying to specify, so that you can use the CSV to specify the visibility instead of this form across the whole import. But I think that's a question that you and I should discuss further.
All right.
Okay. Since I want to be attentive to time, I'm gonna quickly let's just like edit some of these. We'll edit generic object. We can change this one to North America because the moon is kind of a silly geospatial subject. Okay. So an interesting fact about the way that BulkRex handles ingest for or sort of re-imports is that these, so you'll note that there's not a identifier for these objects specified, and that's because we're, so like I could on a re-import go find all of my individual objects and add an identifier field and like put the object identifiers in one by one. But I won't know these identifiers until the object actually does ingest. So what BulkRex provides is a way for me to specify an internal for the bulk engine only identifier. The field that's getting captured from at this point is called Source Identifier. So this could be like a call number or a physical object ID or whatever an appropriate identifier that you're getting from some external place, or alternatively one that you make up for the purposes of the import, which is what I've done here. These need to be globally unique because, as we're about to see, if I this looks like a valid CSV again. Okay, good. If I make a new importer, I can make a new importer to re-import existing objects. And I'm gonna upload my now edited CSV, and I'll create and validate it. And what we'll find now, so we've got new entry IDs here compared to the old ones, but the source identifiers remain the same, which means that this object, so this is, oh, that's geospatial title for demo. Let's find the one that I've changed. So this object's parsed metadata for this importer is going to have title for demo edited. The object, because I've only chosen to validate, isn't edited yet. But when I do continue, then we should see that this has changed. Yay. And we should probably also see that the moon has changed to North America. So the function of these source identifiers is really to make it so that I can create a spreadsheet or whatever import format is appropriate, and maintain that spreadsheet continuously and re-import from it many times, using different importers or editing the same importers are both options here. Probably different importers is the better workflow overall. But what you get then is the ability to just maintain a spreadsheet downstream, not have to pull the data back from Comet to get the IDs to make edits. So I can just like continuously maintain my object metadata over here, and then pull metadata or update the metadata at any point that seems appropriate to me as the maintainer of those objects. So that's kind of neat. The source identifier, as people have been eager to point out, is a complicated concept. And it is really important that these source identifiers be thoughtfully created, because if I like just do this and then whoever's sitting in the cube next to me is also doing that, then we're gonna step on each other's toes. And BulkRex is not gonna warn us about that in advance, except if we're looking out for it. So if you are looking out for it, then you can see that this object that I haven't yet pushed the import from is linked to an existing object, but it's not front and center, and it's something that you have to be prepared to pay attention to. I think that there's a lot of space for discussion about refining this feature set, but it is a very powerful tool, and I want to sort of pitch it to you with that in mind. Okay, so that's import. The main thing, other than that I want to call out, is that you're not seeing me import any files at this point, and that's mainly because we're interested in getting a better setup for where those files should go on in order to power import than exists in the base engine, which is sort of like, I'm going to put them on a server somewhere. Putting them on the Comet server isn't really a pattern that we'd like to follow, so we're working out where to drop those files as a baseline, and Alex has been working on that actively, but we didn't get it wrapped this time, so we're not demoing file ingest just yet. But I think we'll likely be doing that next sprint. I want to pause there and invite questions before I show a not very active demo of export. And then I want to leave just probably I'll cap us at 5 minutes for what are we working on next sprint.
So Tamsin, a question from Kelly.
Yeah.
You were just talking about those source identifiers and how they need to be unique. And Kelly was asking if she was correct in reading in the documentation that if we don't add those source identifiers, that the system will create them.
I think that's right.
Okay.
Let's find out. Let's find out what happens. I just want to disambiguate. So that, but yeah, I'm like, this is great because I think it's helpful for us to sort of kick this around as much as we want.
In this importer, when you select project, are you selecting a collection or are you selecting a workflow?
I'm selecting a project, which has various functions, including to select a workflow. It looks to me like that rejected all of those works. I found 4 works, but I don't actually, maybe. Yeah, failed.
Failed. Mhm.
I think you need to provide the source identifier. And if we would like to have bulk recs create them for us or accept items without source identifiers, I think that that's something that we need to name so that we can get it supported. It seems totally plausible to do. But as of now, it looks like if I don't include source identifiers, I've got a problem.
Okay, I'm going to note that. Let's see. So Kelly also earlier had asked about what sorts of things would cause validation errors. One that I noted yesterday is that I was using a degree, the symbol for the degree sign, and it failed on that. So what other things have you noted, Tamsin, that'll cause validation errors?
So the main thing is that you can configure as part of the M3 setup required fields and other validation requirements for metadata, and you would expect those sorts of validations. Oh, I'm pretty surprised. Did I maybe fail? Yeah, I'm surprised to see that this isn't causing a validation error. I would have thought that missing titles complete. And we just like, are we not actually requiring titles? Maybe that's why. Yeah, this is an object without a title. We don't have a title requirement in this schema. Okay, so I can't demo a failing validation for you. Maybe I'll work up a demo for that for next time, because I do expect validation to be working properly right now. But like if I have fields that are specified as required, then having those be missing or having fields that are meant to be in a controlled vocabulary but are not in a controlled vocabulary, I would expect those sorts of things to fail validation, and for that to be visible from here so that I could remediate the spreadsheet before carrying forward with the ingest. Let's pay attention to making a good validation demo for next sprint demo. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Were there any other questions coming through in chat or that people wanted to chime in about?
I saw one from Kelly earlier, but I don't think you can demo this. She wanted to see what the CSV looked like in Excel.
Oh, I can't open Excel, but this is this is the CSV that I'm using.
Tamsin, can you import it into Sheets?
Yeah, do you want me to just share the CSV and people can play with it?
I think that's better.
Because you can like log in to this Comet and do exactly what I'm doing here. Let me get this to you, Gabriella, and you can share it with anybody who wants it. Is that a good plan?
Sure. And I have others that I've created too.
Is it true that the CSV might not work in the UCSD schema though? Because our
I think that it should work okay, but certainly we could work up a good demo for the UCSD schema as well. I don't think there's anything that is in this CSV here that's not going to have overlap between UCSB and UCSD. Gabriella, the UCSD side does have the geospatial object deployed. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, then I would think that this represents just complete overlap between the two campus schemas at this point. It's definitely possible for me to work up a more complete like metadata fill out of this that will fail in the UCSD side or not port across campuses. So I want to say, Kelly, like you are understanding correctly, but this sheet particularly should be okay.
And then real quick, just to confirm, Tamsin, about that diacritic issue that I ran into yesterday, Arwen wants to make sure that we are going to support character encoding and scientific notations.
I think we should, and I'm curious about the validation behavior that you saw, and I want to make sure that we talk about that.
Okay.
I think that the target here, Arwen, is full Unicode support.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's it for chat.
Okay, great. So super quick, there is another side of this that I'm glad I didn't prep a demo for because we're running out of time very quickly. But the main reason I didn't isn't because I thought we would run out of time. It's because we're not succeeding at getting these exports to run yet, mainly because Longshu and I have been fighting with a volume provisioning issue. So what we're seeing now with these exports is that they create successfully. We're seeing Gabriella's been reporting some funny bugs about certain kinds of exports where we see that behavior. So we're going to track that down. But we do see exports creating successfully for certain kinds of exports. You can create an exporter much like you create an importer, target metadata or metadata and files. You can export the objects that got imported by a previous import. You can export a collection or everything from a work type or just all objects. And it's possible to create a limit so that if like you do this, you don't, like, I probably don't want to export the entire repository, you know? But I can sort of like create an import or an export, add certain filters, choose a format, CSV or bags, and run it. When we run it now, what we see is that the behavior looks all right, but that the download never actually appears. And that's just because we don't have a spot to put those downloads yet. So we thought we might get that carried over the line for this sprint, but I don't think it's going to happen today. It certainly didn't happen for this demo. And that brings me to what's next. So next sprint, we have a few more of those maintenance tasks to take care of. Mainly what we have in the maintenance cycle for next sprint is updating Ruby and Rails for this project, Comet, which we do expect to be a fairly substantial amount of work. We're just seeing the community dependency hierarchies catch up to that support. So in addition to work on our end, we may have some community work that we need to do to carry that forward. So that's a high priority for us because, as I mentioned earlier, Ruby and Rails support for this project is getting pretty long in the tooth, and it's a high priority for us to be caught up to versions of Ruby and Rails that are under current support and that keep us building against systems that we want to be maintaining over time instead of systems that are dying. So that's work that we're hoping to do next sprint. We are also doing various UI improvements. So you saw me name like little label changes. There's a bunch of those around the UI that Gabriella's identified and put together in a ticket that we're going to work on. There's a few more bug fixes that we have either in progress or filed into sprint for next sprint. And then we're going to be working on the file import that we saw discussed earlier, continuing to refine the importer behavior. So you saw sort of a best case demo today, but there's certainly edge cases that we want to tighten up and improve. So we're very welcoming of suggestions about how these importers ought to work so that we can refine the setup that we see here into something that's really, really going to shine for people trying to do this work day to day. And then last but not least, finishing that export work so that we can see import, export round trip, and so that we can see like large scale exports of bagged content from the repository. That brings us right about to the end of our time. I think we have 2 minutes for any wrap up or questions. I'm going to stop screen share now, I think.